Well, the universe did begin to exist, and the remarkable thing is, just from a scientific, materialistic viewpoint, it began from nothing, which is impossible. Think about that. From nothing, nothing comes. Basic philosophical adage. From nothing, nothing comes, and yet from nothing the universe came, and science agrees with that. Now, they've tried to redefine nothing, not very successfully. How can you redefine nothing? Well, you can't. You make it into something when you do that, of course. The point was that because the universe had a beginning, the ramifications for that are remarkable. They rebelled against it for a while, but the evidence just kept adding up and adding up and adding up. All of those mathematicians, physicists, basically started with Einstein's mathematics. He didn't like them because he didn't like the ramifications of that being what he called theological or religious. And of course they are. That's the point. The ramifications of a universe from nothing to everything is religious. Creation's the only explanation. Hey, welcome to Church for Skeptics. This is session 2 of a series that we're talking about regarding evidence for the existence of God. The big picture here that I want to show is that since Romans 1 was written in 2,000 years ago, somewhere around 60 AD, the evidence for the existence of God has gotten stronger and stronger and stronger. Now, it was so strong from the beginning that here's what Romans says was, we started last week with this, we're going to start with it this way as well. It's Romans chapter 1, verse 18. And I'm reading from the NIV. The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. Now, what truth is he talking about suppressing? And that we'll see in the next sentence, the existence of God. The evidence for the existence of God has been suppressed. That's what Romans says. I'm just the messenger here, but I believe it. And then he says, since what may be known, verse 19, since what may be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it plain to them, for since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. I know that can sound a little harsh. I believe it's true, and of course I'm part of the example of that, having called myself an atheist for years during the high school and college years, and then changing my mind, I think with God's great help, in my graduate school years. Last week we talked about 4 evidences just within the last 100 years that just pile on the evidence for the existence of God. I'll give you what those 4 are, and then we'll go back and I'm going to do just a quick follow-up for the first one last week. The 4 things that we can see that have just piled on the evidence for not just the existence of God, but Christianity as well. Number 1 is, of course, that the universe had a beginning. We talked about the cosmological argument, or the Kalam argument, they call it as well, that everything that begins to exist must have a cause. Well, the universe did begin to exist, and the remarkable thing is, just from a scientific, materialistic viewpoint, it began from nothing, which is impossible. Think about that. Nothing, from nothing, nothing comes. Basic philosophical adage. From nothing, nothing comes, and yet from nothing the universe came, and science agrees with that. Now, they've tried to rearrange or redefine nothing, not very successfully, even in their own fields. How can you redefine nothing? Well, you can't. You make it into something when you do that, of course. The point was that because the universe had a beginning, the ramifications for that are remarkable. They knew it at the time. They rebelled against it for a while, but the evidence just kept adding up and adding up and adding up, starting with Albert Einstein, Edwin Hubble and the telescope, the Russian Alexander Friedman, the Belgian Georges Lemaitre. All of those mathematicians, physicists, basically started with Einstein's mathematics. He didn't like them because he didn't like the ramifications of that being what he called theological or religious. And of course they are. That's the point. They are. The ramifications of a universe from nothing to everything is religious. Creation's the only explanation, the only rational explanation that I can see. I'm going to add a little bit to that today, but I'll go ahead and give you the other things that we want to talk about. Then we want to talk about the fine-tuning. We'll start that next time. The fine-tuning of the universe. In other words, in two ways, the universe had to be finely tuned for its own existence. Number one, all the physical constants have to be lined up just right. They can't be contradictory. They can't push against each other. They can't work against each other. Everything has to be just right. The chemistry, the biology, and so forth, the physics, the gravity, everything has to be just right. And then when you start talking about a planet like ours that sustains life, and not just life, but our kind of life, conscious observers' life, reasonable thinking life, then it gets astronomical. And here's my point. 50 years ago, people didn't know that, and I'm going to think that now a lot of people don't know how much it takes for us to have a life like we have it here from a scientific standpoint. So many things have to line up. I mean, hundreds of things have to line up just so, that's why they call it the anthropic principle. The third idea is that life itself is remarkable. It requires information. I don't know that anybody would deny that. Even Richard Dawkins, the great biologist and atheist from Oxford, would not deny. He talks about information all the time in DNA. We are dancing to our DNA, he says. Well, DNA is information. Yes, it's written from chemicals, but it's written in arrangement. Arrangements means information. And then the fourth thing that we want to talk about is archaeology. In the last 50 years or more, it seems like almost every month something comes up that's basically in the Middle East that just shows that the Bible really happened. So we're going to go back and talk about those things, and I just hope you'll give a listen to these and consider these things. There are arguments against creation, for example. A lot of atheists now just say, we don't know how the universe began. They would adhere to the Big Bang Theory, of course, but they just don't know how that happened. Well, maybe not. not from a scientific standpoint, at least, but it surely would say, yeah, okay, well then it's reasonable for you to believe that God did it. And I'm going to give you a bunch of quotes today to that end. Here's my point. I'll give you one point and then some quotes and be done. It's not going to be a short one today. I think that during the many, many years, the centuries before science came up with the idea that the universe had a beginning, most people believed that the universe was eternal or infinite in time. Now listen to what I'm saying, even without science, even without the Big Bang, even without the mathematics, in a sense, Einstein's mathematics, Lemaitre's mathematics, and so forth, even before all of that scientific information, people should have known from a philosophical standpoint that the universe could not have been infinite. Here's why. If the universe had been here forever and ever and ever, and in infinite time, then there would have been an infinite number, because the universe obviously was changing, then there would have been an infinite number of causes and effects. Remember what we're saying, the universe didn't have a beginning, so there's no beginning point, there's no first cause in an infinite series. Let me say that again. There is no first cause in an infinite series. So if the universe had been infinite, there would have been an infinite number of causes and effects. You can use the same idea regarding time. If the universe had been here in an infinite amount of time, then we could never have gotten to this moment in time, because it would have taken an infinite number of seconds or minutes or days or years, whatever you want to use. It would have taken an infinite number of those things to get to this point. And what's the point? You can't get through infinity. Infinity, let me say it this way, infinity, whether it's cause and effect or whether it's time, infinity cannot be actualized in reverse. Now, we can talk about an eternity ahead. We can talk about an infinite number of time ahead because it never actualizes. There's always one more day, one more second, if you want to look at it like that. But going back, you can't do that. And there were a few, by the way, Christian philosophers who knew that. And of course, they had the Bible, which said, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Interesting, many years ago, there had a lot of debates between atheists and theists. And I like those. And there was a debate between Richard Dawkins and John Lennox. And they were talking about the universe had a beginning. They both agreed with that, of course. And John Lennox said, well, the Bible got it right. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And you know what Richard Dawkins' response was? Well, they had 50% chance of getting it right. Either the universe had a beginning or it didn't. And the Bible just happened to get it right. Yeah, right. I don't think so. I just remembered that. And so now we're going to talk about scientists who have changed their mind. I think there's an attitude out there that if you are really smart and you're really scientifically minded, you can't believe in God. You have to come up with some natural, only materialistic explanation for everything. And of course, if you are a materialist and an atheist, and they kind of go together. If there is no God, what is there? And there's nothing but matter. We are just, that's what we are, according to materialism. And scientists themselves, just in thinking these through things, have come up with what Romans says. Romans 1 says that because of the creation, the nature of the creation itself, it's obvious that there has to be something supernatural. We said this last week. Nature cannot create or cause itself. Nothing can cause itself. I hope you understand that. That's not rocket science. That's just simple common sense. Nothing can cause itself because it would have to exist before it existed, so it could cause itself and blah, blah, blah. It's absurd. Whatever caused nature, whatever caused the universe cannot be material because that's what the universe is, all matter. It has to be eternal because it can't be inside time because time began when the universe began, and so forth. It can't be natural because that's what the universe is. It is nature itself, and so it has to be supernatural. I think with the beginning of the Big Bang Theory, and that just became common sense, over the years, many Christians and non-Christians alike have come to see that the evidence is so strong, the ramifications of the Big Bang are so strong. I'm going to read you some quotes here. Scientists are just as reluctant to change their mind as anybody else, me included. We all have a resistance to that. There are books written about the paradigm shifts of science itself. Think about it from the centrifugal or the centrific universe where the Earth is supposedly the center of the universe, from the idea that the universe is not the Earth is not the center of the universe. All those ideas had a hard road to get to where they are now. Eventually they do because the evidence keeps piling up, and so it is with these. So I'm going to read you some quotes here. Now, all of these come, and I'm going to recommend the book again. From this book is Atheism Dead by Eric Metaxas. I would recommend you read it. Yes, he's obviously trying to show that atheism has run its course, but I'm going to read you from some scientists here that some of them have become Christians, all of them have not become Christians, but I just want to read you what they say. I'm going to start with one of the guys who was one of the most adamant opponents of the Big Bang, was a guy named Fred Hoyle. He's a British physicist, and he believed in what he called a steady state theory, that the universe was the same all the time. And he, of course, finally changed his mind about it because the evidence piled up and he was willing to listen to the evidence. And here's what he finally said, and I'm going to quote Fred Hoyle. He says, quote, now listen to this carefully, "A common sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super intellect has monkeyed with physics, intelligent design, a creator, as well as with chemistry and biology. and that there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature. He's basically conceding the fact that the best explanation for a universe from nothing is a creator. It has to have a mind behind it, an intellect behind it, what he calls a super intellect. Well, that's the mind of God, of course. This is also from another great atheist, become theist, now passed away. But the strongest, probably the most prevalent atheist, and he wasn't angry. He had debates, a lot of debates, some with Gary Habermas and others, Gary Habermas being an expert on the resurrection. Anthony Flew was a British philosopher. And for 50 years, he defended atheism. For 50 years, his last book is Why There Is a God. He changed his mind, and he said at the beginning, I will follow the evidence wherever it leads. Now remember, this whole series is about piling on evidence for the existence of God. Here's what Anthony Flew said. I now believe that the universe was brought into existence by an infinite intelligence. I believe that this universe's intricate laws manifest what scientists have called the mind of God. I believe that life and reproduction originate in a divine source. Why do I believe this, given that I expounded and defended atheism for more than half a century? The short answer is this. This is the world picture as I see it that has emerged from modern science. Okay, a couple more here. Edwin Hubble was where a lot of the Big Bang idea came because of what they could see from the telescope, that the Earth universe was expanding. Well, that means going backwards in time, it shrunk down to nothing. The guy that took the place in the 1950s from Edwin Hubble was a guy named Alan Sandage, who's an astronomer, of course. Here's what he said. And he changed over the time doing his science. And he started in the 1950s. This is from a conference in the 1980s. And here's what he said at that conference. I now have to go from a stance as a complete materialistic, rational scientist and say this supernatural event, he's talking about the Big Bang, to me gives at least some credence to my belief that there is some design put in the universe. I am convinced that there is some order in the universe. By the way, pause. Virtually the father of every science thought the same thing. They did their science because they knew there was order in the universe. If there's order in the universe, it has to be put there by an intellect, by a mind, intelligent design. He said, this is what Alan Sandage says, I think all scientists at the deepest level are so startled by what they see in the miraculousness of their interconnections of things in their own field that they at least have wondered why it is this way. Now, here's what he says about his own conversion to Christianity. Ultimately enabled by the witness of dedicated Christians whom he admired for other reasons. Knowing Christians who were also scientists, whom I respected, came as a surprise to me. It meant that it was possible to do science and have a faith. He said that in 1990. I'll give you one more here, and this is my favorite one. Robert Jastrow is not a Christian. He calls himself an agnostic. He is an astronomer. His roots are Jewish. I don't know that he adheres strongly to Jewish orthodoxy or conservatism. He's a scientist and an astronomer. And here's what he said in his book. This is so neat. God and the Astronomers. Quote. This is the icing on the cake. Quote, the discovery of a definite cosmic beginning is an exceedingly strange development. Now keep in mind, what he's talking about is the Big Bang. The universe had a beginning. The discovery of a definite cosmic beginning is an exceedingly strange development, unexpected, and surely it was. Unexpected by Einstein, unexpected by most everybody except for a few mathematicians. Unexpected by all but the theologians. They have always accepted the word of the Bible. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. It is unexpected because science has had such an extraordinary success in trying the chain of cause and effect backward in time. And we talked about the impossibility of an infinite regress of causes and effects. It had to have a beginning just from a philosophical standpoint. But scientists have been trying to work back that backward in time from a cause and effect, and that's what science does. For the scientist, here I'm back to the quote, for the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream. He has scaled the mountains of ignorance. He is about to conquer the highest peak. As he pulls himself over the final rock, he is greeted by a band of theologians who have been sitting there for centuries. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. I hope you understand the ramifications of the Big Bang Theory and the idea that the universe had a beginning from nothing. Everybody knew at the time this, even Stephen Hawking thought it smacked of religion, and he did everything he could to avert that and make nothing into something. Same with Lawrence Krauss, How the Universe Came Here from Nothing, his book. The best, most simple, common sense, as Fred Hoyle would say, the most common sense explanations that God did it. So we're going to move on from there for the next time where we start talking about the universe itself and the nature of the universe and the nature of Earth and the fine-tuning of the universe, not just for life, but for its own existence. I hope you'll keep with me and stick with me. Thanks for watching.